Well, for more on the story, we're joined by ANC Stalwart and Pallo Jordan. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time tonight. Firstly, just your own reflections on the life and times of the now late Kenneth Kaunda.
Thank you. Well, Kenneth Kaunda was of a generation of African leaders who restored the sovereignty of this continent to its people. His passing, I suppose, does mark the end of an era. This is the era of the Nkrumahs, the Nyereres, the Oliver Tambos, the Augustino Netos, the Mandelas, the Jomo Kenyattas and others. KK and the Republic of Zambia were in the amazing geographical situation where they had to assume responsibility on behalf of the African continent for virtually all the southern African states that were compelled to fight for their freedom. You had Angola to its west, you had Namibia to the southwest, to the south Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, and then to the east Mozambique. And Kaunda's Zambia played host to all these liberation movements and supported them in various ways. That earned Zambia the wrath not only of Smith's Rhodesia and racist South Africa, but also that of many Western countries. Kaunda, I think, stood out as one who was absolutely inflexible in his opposition to colonialism and national oppression and apartheid. And as such, assisted all these liberation movements. He played an outstanding role, not only in Southern Africa, but on the continent as a whole. He is one of the giants, and he would be remembered as that.
What you're raising is an important point, that he not only provided space for all of these different anti-colonial movements to set up bases in Zambia, but that came at a cost, and yet he remained relentless in terms of his commitment and his support to his comrades.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is a sterling example of African solidarity, which perhaps other parts of the world might well learn from. Kenneth Kaunda, I remember, playing a very important role, especially towards the latter days of the apartheid regime here in South Africa. He played host on a number of occasions to delegations. First, I would say perhaps the most significant was the delegation of South African capitalists, big capitalists, led by Gavin Grelly of the Anglo-American Corporation. Subsequent to that, a host of other delegations came to Zambia, not only to consult with KK, UNIP, but also with the ANC. We had a delegation from NAFCOC, the National African Federated Chamber of Commerce. We had a number of delegations from the universities in South Africa, and then a number of delegations from various political formations here in South Africa as well, which were hosted by KK in Zambia. And in that, his role, I think, was significant in that he helped not only to steer many of those who were confused about the liberation movement in the right direction, but he also facilitated a great deal of the contact between ourselves and the people back home here.
Did he have a clear vision for the continent, and as somebody who had the opportunity of seeing his work and being close to their affairs, what was that vision?
The vision of the generation that he came from was first and foremost the restoration of African sovereignty. And then having attained that African sovereignty, the African people would then decide themselves which direction they would go in. In the case of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda advocated what he referred to as humanism. And there was an institute for humanism in Kabwe, or the Copper Belt, where this was, I suppose, propagated and taught. And he said that this was different from communism, and it was also different from capitalism. But he said it had a lot of elements which were socialistic about it. One sometimes has to try to sort out why he moved in that particular direction. My understanding of it was that he felt that Zambia and the United Independence Party that he led needed a unifying ideology and needed a statement of its national goals and its national objectives, which was to create a humane society, which is why he chose the term humanism. Now, did they actually attain that? Would I say he fulfilled his dream? I would say not, because there were a whole number of impediments in the way of Zambia. Not only the hostility of the colonial powers that were affected, but the other Western powers as well. So Zambia had a very hard time hewing the course that Kaunda had sought to pursue, but he did not relent.
Let's talk about his time as president of Zambia and the extent to which he was able to bring the country perhaps to a level that he had aspired to, and the extent to which that would have still been in line with democratic principles.
Let's remember when Zambia achieved independence in 1964, the only hospital that there was in the country, in addition to small mission hospitals, was in the Copper Belt. By the time I left Zambia in 1990, there was a thriving university teaching hospital which had been established during the presidency of Kenneth Kaunda. Before 1964, Zambians who wanted to pursue tertiary education had to come to South Africa to Fort Hare or had to go to Makerere College in Uganda. After independence, a University of Zambia was established, and it has produced its own crop of university graduates and postgraduates. Before independence, I would say that Zambia's wealth, copper in the main, served purposes other than Zambian purposes because it was controlled by foreign corporations. That changed as a result of UNIP's policies. Now, in terms of what one might say KK aspired to, which would have been a very prosperous and economically successful Zambia, well, perhaps he hadn't achieved that yet. But these, I think, were the sort of foundation stones which were necessary. Had it not been for independence, there would have been no university, there would have been no hospital, and a whole host of other things. So he pursued his dream. He didn't achieve all of it, but he took Zambia a good way along that path.
What would you say is his legacy?
His legacy is that commitment to the restoration of African sovereignty. His legacy is consistent anti-colonialism, anti-racism, and I'd say his legacy is also the pursuance of the creation of a humane society, one which is very different from a colonial one which is very different from the capitalist societies that dominate the world today.
That was ANC Stalwart Pallo Jordan. Let me thank you so much for your time tonight, reflecting there on the life and times of the former Zambian President Kenneth Kaunda. Well, more for you still ahead on the channel after this. Do stay with us.